Episode 136 of the podcast. This week we're talking about why accurate terminology is important, especially when some of our tools are thoughts, processes, and procedures. In the second part, we're going to talk about one term in particular that is misused pretty frequently. You're listening to the Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast. I'm Chrissy Newmeyer-Smith. I'm a certified professional groomer, a certified behavior consultant for canines, a certified professional dog trainer, and the owner of Happy Critters in Nashua, New Hampshire. And this, my friends and colleagues, is the podcast where grooming and training meet. It's no secret that I love my tech talk, and I can rephrase it and I can get away from tech talk for instructive purposes, but I really want to encourage us all to be on the same page, saying the same terms as a way to effectively communicate thoughts, ideas, and procedures. We need to think about our tools so that we can replicate the results of others. That's the real purpose of terminology. It helps us do what others are doing, achieve the same kind of results. Now, a general example of terminology. This one I use with my owners, but I think it's pretty much a general example for any of us to think about. I don't cook. I'm not the cook at my house. My husband is a wonderful cook and he enjoys cooking. So, I can cook, but I'll tell you what, I follow a recipe and I follow it like it's a chemistry set. I need measurements. I need the tools with those measurements. I need to know the basic procedures, things like boil and simmer and stir. If you ask me to saute, I'm going to need to look that up. Honest to God, I'm not a cook, right? I don't know how to saute. So instructions like season to taste to me mean that I'm going to make something pretty bland because you have to tell me what to actually put in. I'm never going to be the person who knows when something needs more nutmeg. I know my limitations. I can boil pasta without a recipe. I would like to know how long to boil that pasta, but if I don't have that in front of me, I can figure out when pasta is ready. So I have a little bit of experience. Yeah, I know, it's bad. I can make ice without a recipe. Even better when it's a button on my refrigerator. So when you think about recipes, and following instructions and measurements and times and procedures. That's the kind of stuff that I need to be able to cook. And I think that's a pretty good general example for most of us, that across the board we can all kind of relate to that, treating a recipe like a chemistry set. Now, a grooming example. Let's say we have a dog and the note says, maybe it's a note from another groomer in another shop, or maybe it's a shop that you're just now working at. But this is a grooming example. The dog gets a one comb all over with a cute round head. Does that give us enough information? Is that a 1-inch comb or the number 1 comb? Because that's a mistake you don't want to make twice. That's a significant length difference. Is that cute round head based on the same length as the rest of the body? Or is it a bit longer? Does the owner want the ears short and a cute round head like a Bichon head where the ears are part of the cute round head? Or does the owner want the longer ears with a cute round head? Do you see how we can have multiple interpretations if we don't have enough terminology, if we don't have enough specifics? We can interpret that in multiple ways. Now, it sets us up to fail if we don't search for more clarity. And I want you to think about that. It's not about if the look is right or wrong, or if the procedure is right or wrong. It's about finding out the exact details about that dog's trim so that we can match it. So that we can do the same thing, so that we can meet our owner's expectations or our employer's expectations, because every shop, every groomer has their own kind of style, their own handwriting, their own flair, and knowing what to do to match it. So that's my grooming example, and I think you can relate to that. Like, we have these tools, they have names, and we need to be able to communicate to each other what tool we're using. Again, is it a 1-inch comb or the number 1 comb? If you're not a groomer, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense to you, but hopefully the cooking one made sense. Knowing what we have available to us is how we're going to be able to communicate thoughts, ideas, procedures, and replicate them. Now, I hope those examples were helpful because now I'm going to break it to you that training terminology is misused all the friggin' time. Oh my God, so misused. And it's not that it's right or wrong or what they're doing is correct or incorrect, but when you use incorrect terminology, it means that the next person can't use the same tool with the same results. So if you don't understand a term, you can't use that tool or procedure correctly, and you are likely to have a terrible time trying to replicate results. You are likely to become frustrated when stuff and things don't work when you try them. As a trainer, the grooming industry are at pet owner level pretty often. You might be a really advanced pet owner in terms of behavior, but so often in the grooming industry, you guys are at pet owner level, and I'm working to change that. I want you guys all to know so much more about behavior. So anybody who wants to know more about behavior, that's what this podcast is for. I want you to know it. I'm doing it for free. That's why I'm throwing these out here, because it really is such an important part of what we do, and we can be more effective. Now, the grooming industry is usually relying on 2 or 3 tools. Now, we have so many other tools to choose from, but the grooming industry is usually relying on just 2 or 3. And I want you to think about their owner level tools at that. They're the equivalent of an owner going through the pet aisle at Target and buying like one of those brushes with the pins on one side and the fake boar bristles on the other side because, well, it's like a 2-in-1 brush. That's never really the right tool for the dog they have. Then they buy a nail clipper and a pair of scissors, right? These are owner level tools. Maybe they got the right one, maybe they didn't, but they have like 3 tools and they think they've got themselves a grooming kit. Now, as groomers, we know there's a huge variety of tools, and we would want to tailor that tool to that dog and to that dog's coat type, right? We would want to make sure that a doodle owner is getting the right tools for their individual doodle. Their individual doodle with an undercoat. What? He sheds? He does. Or their individual doodle who has actually the poodle coat and doesn't have undercoat. But we make sure that they have the right tools. As a trainer, I'm trying to make sure we're using good tools, good quality tools that are appropriate for the dogs in front of us and knowing which ones are going to be better for the dog in front of us. I want you to think about the grooming industry uses like 3 or 4. One of them is the stern no. We hear that a lot. That's the no, stern no. Okay, we're going to call that a training tool. Sure, but it's a pretty vague tool. It's that weird brush that's not right for anybody. It's not the right brush for any coat type, but it'll get you out of a bind. Yeah, the stern no. We also have the other tool, the good dog. Another tool, not really the best of tools, but it's kind of an owner level tool, right? The grooming industry uses it a lot. Now, the third tool that the grooming industry uses a lot of is the equipment used to restrain a dog so that we can get the job done. Just mechanical restraints and equipment. We use that a lot in our industry. Not a bad tool, depends on how you use it. We need more clarity to make sure that we're using it well and that we're getting the results that we want from it. Now, I've got to say, there's another one that we sometimes see. I'm seeing it more and more, and that's going to be the use of treats. But I'm going to say it's a random use of treats because it's not actually defined in training terms. I think that in the grooming industry, we're like, well, just, add cookies. We find situations, we start adding cookies without really thinking about what process we're using or defining it in training terms. So, for example, some uses of treats could be luring, bribes, classical conditioning uses treats pretty often, positive reinforcement or negative punishment. Those are part of operant conditioning. Positive reinforcement, negative punishment could very often use treats. Those are just a few. There are many more uses of treats and ways that treats could be used in training. But they don't all give the same result. They don't all work on the same problem. And I find that using these really kind of vague training procedures isn't really helpful for us. So as we talk about terminology, it's really important that we all are understanding what the word means, or the procedure, right? The difference between a boil and a simmer is similar to the difference between the 1-inch comb and the number 1 comb. You might have a shop that always calls a 1 comb a 1-inch comb, but you need to know. Just like the difference between a lure and a bribe could be really subtle. Sometimes people don't know that they're bribing their dog when they're trying to use a lure, or that they're luring a dog when they're trying to add a positive reinforcement. Knowing what these words mean is really important. And in the next part, I'm going to talk about one particular term that I find gets used inappropriately. It's a big misunderstanding that gets used all the time. We're going to talk about it more. If you're enjoying this podcast, please remember to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes, and tell all of your friends. So the term that I hear used wrong all the time, so frequently, is the term negative reinforcement. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into what reinforcement means and punishment means, and what positive and negative mean, because I think that it's really common for us to think that we're using those terms correctly because we see it written out someplace incorrectly. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus. It's such a common one. So I'm just going to throw it out there that it's really common to have this term flip-flopped in our head, that we're not necessarily using it correctly. That means that if I tell my listeners, if I tell you guys that you can use a mixture of positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement at the same exact time, you have to know what negative reinforcement means. Because if you think that negative reinforcement is when we give a stern no, you cannot possibly do that while you're also giving positive reinforcement. A stern no is not negative reinforcement. But no, it is. No, it's really not. That's not what negative reinforcement means. It is so common, and it's my pet peeve, I gotta say. It just drives me a little bit crazy every time I hear it, because I'll have people say, but Chrissy, you know what I meant. And while I do know what you meant, you don't know how to use negative reinforcement the right way unless you understand what negative reinforcement means. So I can't communicate a different procedure for you if you think that a stern no is negative reinforcement. So reinforcement is when we are building or maintaining a behavior. This is something that we want. This is a behavior that we like, that we want to encourage, that we want to stay the same, that we want to build on, that we want to expand on. That's what reinforcement is. A stern no doesn't build behavior. Think about that for a minute. A stern no is never going to be a reinforcer. It's not reinforcing. It does not build or maintain the behavior that we do want. What do we want, and how are we going to build it? And we do that through reinforcement techniques. So positive reinforcement could be praise. Good dog, if a dog likes that enough to try doing the same thing again. But negative reinforcement has such a bad reputation amongst dog trainers, because negative reinforcement is when you remove something to establish pleasant. So what does that mean? So if I remember, actually, I think it was like one of the very first episodes of the podcast, so only about 2 years ago, that I was like, I really can't think of any examples of negative reinforcement in dog grooming. And wow, have I come a long way, because now all I can see are examples of negative reinforcement and what a powerful tool it is for us. Negative reinforcement when we're grooming very often is I have a dog's paw in my hand and I trim one toenail and they're being really, really good, and I set that foot back down and let go. It's backing off from something they thought was challenging as a reward for being good. And it's a powerful tool. However, the dog has to find that pleasant to continue to do that. That's negative reinforcement. The positive and negative in reinforcement building, right? The positive and negative are added or subtracted. They are algebraic, positive and negative. Something added would be positive reinforcement. Something removed would be negative reinforcement. Something removed, behavior increases or maintains. Positive reinforcement. Something added, behavior increases or maintains. How cool is that? So now knowing that, if I said, while you're picking up a foot and that dog's being really, really good, the dog with notes all over the place about how he hates having his feet touched. You pick up a foot and he's being really good, and I tell you use positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement at the exact same time. What that would mean is, hey, good buddy, while you're putting the foot back down. How cool. And we do it all the time. In fact, if you get used to doing stuff like that, you're going to find that the dogs are responding well to it. It's a great tool. But if you're still thinking negative reinforcement is a stern no, you cannot possibly follow those instructions, right? If I told you use positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement at the exact same time while he's being good, you're holding his foot, everything in his history says he hates having his feet touched, and you're holding his foot and he's being good, use positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement at the same exact time, you'd need what? A second person saying bad dog while you say good dog? It doesn't make any sense. So, circle back. Reinforcement is about building behaviors. So what about the no, bad dog? Like the stern no. It's not about whether or not that's okay. It's about looking at the results and knowing what that procedure is. Punishments are for decreasing or eliminating behaviors that we don't want. So if we're focusing on a behavior we don't want, that would be a punishment mindset. What can I do to decrease and stop, diminish this behavior that I do not want? And again, positive and negative. What can I add to decrease this behavior? That's where the stern no might come in. What can I remove to decrease that behavior? That's where food might go away. There was food there. I was ready to give it to you. And at the last minute, you did something I don't want. Like, food went away. To give you an example of that, negative punishment would be telling a teenager, you just did something that I do not approve of. I'm taking your phone away. What? You're taking my phone away? Oh my God. So be thinking about that's still going to reduce behavior. That's a punishment. Now, when we talk about terminology, if we can all know what those things mean, then we can ask better questions for clarity's sake, right? Just knowing, here's the thing, if you're not a groomer, just knowing that there are 2 snap-on combs that could be referred to as a 1 comb, just knowing that means that you are more likely to ask good questions when you are faced with something you don't quite understand. That's good. We need clarity in our terminology. So knowing that there are multiple ways to work on something is going to be helpful, that there are multiple ways to use food. There are multiple ways to increase behavior that we do want, to decrease behavior that we don't want. And then we can get into our opinions about that. We all have opinions. We all have ways that we like to do things. If you've been listening to the show, you have probably caught on that I tend to lean more toward let's be in a reinforcement mindset. Find the thing you want the dog to be doing, because that is the fast track. It's more specific. We're going to work toward calm, comfortable, cooperative. We're going to try to build a dog who feels like this is safe and this is okay and that there's nothing to be afraid of, there's nothing to rebel against, and good behavior follows because they feel safe and they're being calm and we're helping them be comfortable and we want them to cooperate. So I'm in the positive reinforcement mindset most of the time. I use a lot of negative reinforcement in grooming because what they're having trouble with is the fact that they find it unpleasant. I don't use negative reinforcement in other types of training. Like I wouldn't want my dog to sit so that something unpleasant stopped, right? That's not really how we use it. But in a situation where relief from the thing that we're doing can be a powerful tool, yes, we're going to use it a lot. It's a great tool. Why wouldn't we use that? We're going to stop doing it at some point anyway. So I want you to be thinking about clarity and helping dogs be better. Now, if we are in a focused mindset of I'm trying to decrease behavior, I don't want that, I don't want that, I don't want him to do this, I don't want him to do that. I want you to think about, here's a grooming example. A grooming example would be the customer who says, I don't want him shaved and I don't want him to look like a poodle. It's information, but it's not enough information. We want more clarity. I want to know more about what you do want. Well, we don't want his ears like they were last time. And that tells me something, but not enough. What do you want? Do you see how there are so many ways that we as groomers could fail to give the trim that they're looking for if what we're trying to do is stop doing? Like, oh, she doesn't want him shaved and she doesn't want him to look like a poodle and she doesn't want his ears like they were the last time. That's not clear information. So we need to give more information. We need to search out more information. And that's why I'm in a reinforcement mindset when I am working with the dogs. I want to encourage them to behave exactly the way I want them to behave, instead of worrying about all the things I don't want. Because I'll tell you what, same grooming example, if you know what comb would work well on that dog, what length they want, what look they want, if you just kind of draw it out and talk to them and kind of show them on the dog's chin, so you're saying, if I take this part off, if I do this, if I do this, if I do this, and we work together, gain some clarity, you are likely to get that dog done the way they want. And then put it into notation that makes sense for another groomer so that you can replicate it next time. The same with our dogs. I want them to be encouraged to do the thing I want them to do. Do the thing I want you to do, which is basically calm, comfortable, and cooperative, and be good on the table, and relax with me and let me touch you with stuff and things. Let me reposition you when I need to. If I just try to focus on don't bite me, don't bark, don't twitch away, knock it off, it's going to take forever, right? It's almost like playing charades, How many different versions can this dog come up with that are incorrect? How many different trims could you do on that dog before the owner thought it was good? There are all sorts of things you could do aside from shaving and making them look like a poodle, which I use as an example. If you guys aren't groomers, I know most of my listeners are groomers. If you're not a groomer, you have no idea. We hear it all the time. Don't make them look like a poodle. Very few dogs are leaving looking like a poodle. I don't know what people think poodles look like, but we can't make that dog who's not a poodle look like a poodle even if we wanted to most of the time. So it's not really good, clear instructions. Clear instructions make such a tremendous difference. So anytime we hear someone saying, no, bad dog, I'm using negative reinforcement, think about it for a minute and go, you know what? I need to help that person understand that, no, you're trying to use positive punishment. That's not negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is an entirely different procedure because we all can learn this together. The grooming industry needs this. The grooming industry needs to have more information about behavior, and I don't know why it hasn't happened sooner. I don't know, but I'm here throwing it out there for you guys every week. All right. I will say thank you guys for your patience because this summer has been really tough getting these podcasts out on time. What seems like probably not a lot of work to you guys is actually a lot of work. These things are a lot of work and it's been hard to fit them in. But I generally have one out every week so that I can bring different aspects of training to our grooming tables and to our grooming situations and to our owners and to our veterinarians and to help these dogs be better for the kind of day-to-day health care that they really require. If you'd like more information, you can find me at Chrissy@happycritters.net, happycrittersdogtraining.com, or you can join the Facebook group, Creating Great Grooming Dogs podcast, or the Facebook page, Creating Great Grooming Dogs. I really look forward to hearing from you.